I do believe you got to stand for something. And I'm not talking like morals and treating people. I'm saying in whatever business you run, any sports franchise you run, this is what we do. And for the most part, I think successful people have something like that to fall back on. But there are points in time at any, you kind of get to a line when you're playing, especially in sports, when you're playing a team that is taking advantage of that. Years ago, and even after they lost, Daryl Morey said, well, in Vegas, statistically, we should have won that series. It's like, no, Daryl, you lost because you shot 27 straight threes. 27, and you missed them fucking all. If you just would have shot a couple normal jump shots, got to the rack, you probably beat the Golden State Warriors. You win that series, and you are probably the NBA champs. You would have been. I mean, no one's beating you. The Cavs aren't beating you. But you were so like, this is what we do. Basketball is a little different than football because it's like a flow of a game. But you could always call a timeout and say, hey, guys, we need to get to the rack. Football, I understand having a game plan. This is what we do. Well, the moment it's not working, and never forget, Andy Reid once hired this guy named, I don't know, Jim Washburn, who was Chris Kaceric's mentor. And what do? The wide nine get up the field. Now, clearly the Niners have adapted it. They're not quite as crazy wide nine-ish, right? But the philosophy is exactly the same. We penetrate and we get upfield. And for the most part, and especially when you're winning, but just against most teams that have shitty O-lines, the Chiefs don't, you can kick their ass and just throw them off because you're just always in the backfield, even on their passing game, their quick-hitting game. You're just always just overwhelming them. Well, today, Andy, who is the greatest screen caller in the history of the sport, and two, one of the best offensive game planners, who is comfortable with this scheme in terms, he went against it in practice. He saw its flaws when it was losing him games. Today, he just undressed the edges. That's all he did. He kept hitting edges, whether it was screens, whether it was fly sweeps, whether it was to Kelsey just to get quickly, because he always knew the D-line and Bosa specifically. And listen, I understand that, but this is a game where it's like, hey, on the sideline, we got to change a little bit. Hey, Nick, take one step and maybe pause. I'm not saying two gap and stop, but you can't just keep throwing the same fucking pitch when the ball keeps getting hit out. And this is always my problem with quote unquote high level coaches that have this is what we do. You got to change, or every time that you play this guy, you will lose. And you'd be like, well, you only play Andy Reid once. Well, if I'm these other coaches, and what does any coach say? Well, we just it's a copycat league. What works really well against a defense that has dominated this year, wouldn't you be crazy to not take some of this game plan, some of these plays, know how you can take advantage of the edges? And and I'm not even talking about next week or the next couple. I'm just talking just in general. I hate that philosophical just inability to never change, especially live in the heat of it. It's like, guys, my mom can see that you're having trouble with something specifically. And it's so easy to hit these plays. And that 3rd and 20 for 35 is such a classic example. What's going to happen? They're going to fly up the fucking field. And at minimum, you're going to get 15, maybe not 15, but 12 yards. You're going to walk to 12. And then who knows? I mean, if they block it right and they get super aggressive, you walk for 35 yards. Because that's what he did. He didn't get touched till about the 30th yard, right?
Well, to your point, I think it's, it should be a red alert, because what do most teams do with Nick Bosa?
Double
the guy with the ball. Well, yeah, double teaming on pass plays, but the guy with the ball does not run towards Nick Bosa.
We go the other way. Yeah.
It goes the other way. So it's a red alert when they're running plays right by Nick Bosa. The Haberman touchdown, I think it was the first jet sweep touchdown. I can't keep track of Haberman scored 3 touchdowns, but they ran the one that was just they ran it right by Bosa's face. And I don't it's easy, on TV to see. You got old linemen, you got people running by you, but they just ran that thing right by him. Their idea, and they were right, they knew that the Niners wouldn't be able to recognize it because they wouldn't be looking for it.
Well, and he showed them early on, too, whether it was the first or second series. Might have been the second series because they scored when he got the back-to-back, off, in the neutral zone. He was clearly amped up getting upfield. So they doubled down. They go, God damn, this guy not only is not, worried about our screen game, he's going extra hard because it was kind of a game for him, right? I'm back. I'm going to fucking sack the best quarterback in the league. And I think, but you got to pick your spots with that shit is what I'm saying.
But I think part of it was he knew their offense was going to be very quick. Like he knew they were going to get the ball out quickly, and he wasn't going to be able to get there, which is
the best way to neutralize any great pass rusher, right? It's a Tom Brady.
Or run the ball at him. If you can run the ball effectively at him, that's
like, we don't really run.
Well, somebody runs, but they're not those types of run plays. But the McKinnon play, the 3rd and 20 was the same thing. I mean, it was Bosa that was right there.
But I think Andy would tell you
that had that McKinnon on Bosa, and McKinnon just went by him, and Bosa got stuck.
And this gets back to like the West Coast offense and the philosophy that Bill Walsh had, is that like a screen pass or even a wheel route, you guys, everyone's like, it's an extra. If we run 7 of those throughout the game, right, throws to our running backs, you guys look at those like passes. We say that's basically a run in our offense, right? Behind the line of scrimmage, a short where the ball is not traveling more than
the completion percentage is going to be so high.
I just say we're getting the ball to our running back in a position behind the line of scrimmage to make plays. And you could say almost that some of Kyle's plays with Debo behind the line of scrimmage, even when it's a throw, it kind of operates like a run, right?
Yes.
And I think that's where Andy Reid, but he's been doing it for there's no secret, right? Everyone knows. I went into this game thinking like, I bet he's going to really try to take advantage of their up the field stuff.
Yeah.
But just naturally, like
in the game,
D'Amico's just genius guy. You would think he would just have a different pitch, but listen, I'm a huge Chris Kasirik guy. Like the Niners would have been in major trouble without the guy. But like today specifically is one where I just don't know why we look on the sideline and go, hey, throughout the week, like, hey, we got to be ready for this. We're going to have this separate package that they start hitting us that we're going to like, maybe even throw the changeup, right? We're going to go one step and then I'll drop and maybe pick off a screen. I don't know. He throws screens. Like that's when most people think Andy Reid. Now with Tyreek Hill, they've been throwing bombs for 4 years. But I think historically in his career, he's like screen game, screen game, screen game. And then even with the Chiefs, right? The screen game he has all these like crazy ones with Travis that it's really like, God, I've never seen that tight end.
Like some of those inside pitch plays too. Don't forget about those.
And it's just it boggles my mind. It's one of my biggest pet peeves with coaches. It happens more in football, definitely, than basketball. The Morey one's probably the best example you're going to find because most times in basketball, eventually the guy will try to get fouled or something. Like that's a pretty big outlier. In football, it happens a lot. Like, this is what we do, guys. This is what we do. It's like, well, you just lost fucking 50-10. Good job. Keep hammering that one home.
44-23, but that means it was 44-13 after the Niners took a 10-0 lead.
Isn't it crazy when you get blown out? When you get blown out, that 10-0 feels like it happened 7 days ago.
Don't even remember it.
Not at all. Not at all.
Did you feel that way though? Like I bet most people listening to this or watching this did. It's now the one thing is the Niners there are categories of Kyle Shanahan games. One of them is everyone gets hyped, and then Stafford throws a pick, and the Niners run away with it. Everyone gets hyped, and then they sack Aaron Rodgers on the first series, and the Niners run away with it. So they do play some of those games that weirdly they blow somebody out, right?
But they had that 3-0, then they pick them. They're up 10-0.
So what I'm saying is, when it was 10-0, did you think it was going to be that game? Because the one thing about 10-0 is the second the other team scores, it's just a regular game again, right? If you don't go,
they scored 7, it was 10-7. Yes, normal.
Yeah, if you don't go 10-0 to 17-0, then it's 10-0 to 10-7. Now it's everyone was fired up, but it's a long day. It's a 4-quarter game.
I don't know if it was Olsen or Burkhart said it. Kyle's like, he will throw you the ball, but then the problem is he locks in and he takes over and he starts making miraculous plays.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, he said Mahomes will throw you the ball, which historically he has thrown picks, but then he can just really zone in and turn into like Tiger Woods in his prime and not make a mistake. And that's kind of what it felt like. But he didn't even have to do that.
It was not one of those pick you apart.
No, it was a cohesion. That felt today like a scheme offense. That felt like, Andy, I'm going to embarrass you, D'Amico. I am going to have people go, when you get interviewed, they're going to ask about this performance. What happened? Like that was that level of like, if I'm sitting down with you, like, what happened in the Chiefs game?
Well, because it could have gone the other way, right? You adjust, all of a sudden it's the kind of game that you're getting interviews because of the way you played Andy Reid's Chiefs.
For sure.
But I also think it was a team loss. Like once the Chiefs start scoring, there's only one way you can win this game, and you got to keep scoring touchdowns, right? And sometimes that happens. Sometimes your defense bails you out. Sometimes your offense has to go score.
100%. But
they were not like, I know the final score was 44-23, But this was not a game that they could not play with Kansas City. It wasn't until
but you agree. If I told you the Chiefs score 35 points yesterday, you'd say the Niners lose, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a combination of you got to get them stopped on 3rd and 20. There's no question. I mean, you don't throw a pick at the end of.
Well, can you read me the sequence of touchdowns that you I think you read it to me before we hopped on. You know what I mean?
Which sequence?
Well, after he threw the pick, just what the results were of the Chiefs' drives.
Oh, after Garoppolo threw the pick, or after Mahomes threw the pick?
After Mahomes threw the pick.
So the possessions for the Chiefs went interception, touchdown, missed field goal, weird miss, touchdown. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What is that? 6 touchdowns on 7 drives, 7 scoring opportunities on 7 drives, missed field goal.
And think about this with the missed kick, right? Andy did get fucked a little bit when he's telling them to huddle and they called the timeout. And he even laughed at it on the sideline, right? Because when I was like, oh, the Niners are calling timeout, it's a little bold. And they're like, oh, the Chiefs did. And then you can see Andy's mad and he's going like this and they called it. But when you laugh like that and don't undress the officials, does he feel like we're in complete control of this thing?
Yeah, although Rinaldi did say he was yelling at the refs that it wasn't.
Well, yeah, I mean, but he didn't go like apoplectic Belichick throwing, a headset. I wonder if in the Bills game that happens, he loses it. This game, by that time, you kind of felt like, well, they're not going to score when they're in the red zone. I mean, Jimmy's baby zone pick. I guess we can get into Jimmy a little bit later, but that one thing you saw today that was on full display of Kyle, and this is just, I mean, Mahomes versus Jimmy and just the operation is one, the Chiefs defense just isn't that bad. It's just not bad. I mean, they got pass rushers.
Chris Jones, I mean,
their linebackers fly around. They'll give up some touchdowns, but most teams do. Fuck, look at the Niners. Their ability, even without Tyreek, to gain yardage because of scheme and the talent at quarterback is something that the 49ers cannot relate to at all. I mean, it's just not a relatable characteristic, right? Like they just can't go on like 4 plays and gain 60 yards with normal plays. Like, yeah, if Debo wants to break 3 tackles and run around a guy, yeah, that can. But I'm just saying, like, run a route that gains you 22 yards. And then the next route gains you 17 yards. And then the next screen gains you 18 yards. And you have gone from the 30-yard line. Now all of a sudden you're at the 22. You're like, time to score, baby. And I was like, oh, 6 here, 4 here, -2, and then 6, and then 8. It's like, Jesus Christ, huddling.
Their rhythm changes completely when they get into the red zone. It just does. When they get to like the 28 or the 30 or the 25, the rhythm it becomes a whole other. Doesn't it feel like it becomes a whole other possession all of a sudden?
Yeah.
And for all of the times over the years that Kyle Juszczyk and Kittle has been schemed wide ass open, not a lot of guys getting schemed wide ass open right now. I mean, we talk about
sure.
Huh?
I mean, that's for damn sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs are getting guys schemed wide ass open, and with the exception of Kelsey, the guys that they're getting wide ass open are not as good as the Niners' offensive skill guys.
No,
right?
Like, you don't think Andy would like Debo and Ayuk?
Ayuk made some play. I mean, Ayuk did make some plays today.
100%. But I'm just saying, like,
no, I know.
How good would their offense be if they had, like, would they trade Juju and Haberman right now for Debo and Ayuk? Maybe Juju actually might be a better route runner than Debo, but they would trade. I mean, they would take Ayuk.
Juju had 7 for 124 today.
Yeah, Juju's good with them. But think how good Ayuk would be on that team. What would Ayuk get a game? 7 to 10 catches, like every single game.
Yeah.
It feels like the Niners really got to work to get him the ball, right?
Yes. And even then, once he's in the right position, the pass sometimes is a pass that creates a problem for him. 21 Ravage on the stream says, injury excuses, question mark. I mean, guys got beat up today, but I say no. Injury excuses for the 49ers today. Was Bosa 100%? Was Charvarius Ward? Probably not. I mean, he came out, he came back. Hufanga, and I texted you before the Hufanga exit that you can you can see why he had 2 collarbone injuries and a shoulder injury in college. He does not wrap up. I had I tweeted, after his pick, which was awesome. I tweeted a Polamalu picture, and some guy, a former NFL player who knows Troy, started DMing me just about Hufanga, and we started going back and forth. And he said, I'm not a tackling expert. This guy who played defense in the NFL was like, sometimes you just got to take an easy tackle over a heavy hit. And Hufanga, God love him, goes for the heavy hit. And, that puts his body is at risk. Now, your body's at risk no matter what you do. But so that was a factor.
Well, the play that he went down and then ended up coming back in. When that hit, when they showed it slow motion, I thought that could either be a broken collarbone or a concussion. It could have been either one of the two.
Yeah.
Now, granted, this is where like the new tackling rules, you got to tackle low because if you go higher,
Yeah. I thought it was shoulder just based on, but obviously he
got kneed in the head.
Yeah. So it easily could have been. But I don't think that was, and Greenlaw. I mentioned Greenlaw went out with the calf. They got a lot of guys back in this game. So whether or not those guys were 100%, I was surprised to see Mooney Ward in the game. But I don't know. I didn't think injuries were a reason for the loss today.